Mr. Biffo and the Antipodean Arseache. Once upon a time there was a very good boy called Mr. Biffo. In fact, Mr. Biffo was such a good boy his mummy and daddy arranged for him to go on a holiday, which was definitely a reward for his good behavior and in no way a desperate last-ditch attempt to save the broken spirits caused by his irrepressible toilet enthusiasm. Mr. Biffo was incredibly excited by the holiday, as it was to go to the other side of the world and see how they liked everything being covered in poo for a change. He got on the aeroplane, and when it took off it made his tummy feel all funny so that the insides of his tummy leaked out, causing a biohazard incident at 40,000 feet, so the cabin crew had to cordon off half of the plane. Everyone had to sit in the other half away from Mr. Biffo and the gallon of fecal exuberance that was now sloshing about as the plane turned around to make an emergency landing at the nearest airport. After several weeks of this flight plan repeating, Mr. Biffo eventually arrived at his destination and got off the plane along with the crew, who then arranged for it to be taken away and burned. Goodness, that was an eventful journey, Mr. Biffo exclaimed, not even beginning to cover the half of it or acknowledge the lives and airline profit margins he had ruined. I wonder what I should do first. A gurgle in his tummy answered that question for him, and he sprinted to the nearest toilet. I hope the toilets here aren't any different, he said, possibly foreshadowing an incident with hilarious consequences. Mr. Biffo pulled down his pants to go poo, and tried to lift the gurgling stink baby from its gut, when he found he was having difficulty. Oh yes, that's right, things go down the plug hole the other way here. Mr. Biffo got off the toilet, then placed a hand on either side of the bowl and climbed into a handstand above the toilet. This must be how they do it down here. As Mr. Biffo pushed, a bubbling mud volcano of bum chocolate emerged, and a sulfuric assault on the nasal membranes of everyone in a 3-mile radius began. Mr. Biffo's misunderstanding of the Coriolis effect meant every globule of the brown eruption oozed lazily down his flanks, past his face and into the toilet bowl, coating him in a hot brown lava of dung that slowly dried and cracked before another layer built up on top of it. When the flow from Mount Arseache finally subsided, Mr. Biffo righted himself in the brown muddy casing he was now in split open, leaving a perfect upside-down cast reminiscent of a tuba full of shit, or an upside-down tree full of shit. Mr. Biffo was semi-ashamed about his misunderstanding and stepped outside the bathroom expecting to see a lot of people vomiting and upset by the smell, but everybody was continuing about the business normally. He stepped out into the street, which in any normal place in the world would have been cleared as people ran for the hospitals, leaving trails of vomit and sadness in the wake, but there was no panic whatsoever. Mr. Biffo was very confused, and also a little bit disappointed. He stopped and asked one of the locals, almost in tears, "Please sir, why can nobody here smell my magnificent bum musk?" The answer astonished him. He had actually arrived in Rotorua, New Zealand, and the only thing you need to know about that is that it smells like eggy fart all the time. I highly recommend going there, but you will have a headache the entire time. Anyway, Mr. Biffo fell to his knees and screamed to the heavens in joy. He had finally found a place where he could fit in and nobody would comment on his unusual and constant aroma of arse gas. Then he got deported and sent back to England, because while Rotorua does smell of arse gas, it isn't normally covered in shit, and the locals didn't want New Zealand to be turned into Poo Zealand. The end.